You're listening to Eating for Eden, episode 55. When it comes to doing something about climate change, your food choices matter. Thanks for tuning in to Eating for Eden, a podcast that takes a food-first approach to climate action. I'm your host, Jessica J. Schroeder, and I am passionate about food that tastes good and does good. I'll guide you with practical tips and help you thoroughly enjoy your food along the way. As we get started today, would you do me a favor? If you've been enjoying this podcast and have not yet left a review, would you take a minute to leave a review? Your kind words help others to find this great content as well. If you've learned valuable things here and want to help others catch some of that inspiration too, leaving a review is a great way to make that happen. Thanks a bunch, friends. Okay, let's dive in. In the very first episode of this podcast, which I titled Food, Climate Problem and Solution, I introduced the double-edged sword that is our daily food choices. On the one hand, food is responsible for a quarter of global emissions and thus the resulting climate change, effects we're already feeling now as well as those to come. On the other hand, leveraging our choices can help turn that problem into a viable solution. Food can't single-handedly solve the climate crisis, but nothing can. No one solution is sufficient. We need to approach the problem from multiple angles. Given food's sizable contribution to the overall problem and the level of power most of us have to choose what we eat each day, it is one of the critical areas in which both institutions and individuals need to get busy. In the last episode, number 54, I presented the 5 worst offenders when it comes to food and climate change. In other words, the 5 foods contributing most to food being part of the climate problem. Today, we'll focus on the 5 best foods to eat for planetary health, the 5 best foods for turning food into a climate solution. Some of the individual foods that have the lowest emissions, either per kilogram of food product or per calorie, include examples such as citrus fruit, apples, root vegetables, potatoes, onions and leeks, brassicas or cruciferous veg, nuts, barley, peas, and maize or corn. But instead of focusing on these individual foods, similar to the last episode, we'll take a broader look at the larger pattern and focus on 5 main categories. To review, in the last episode, we addressed the 5 worst offenders when it comes to food and climate change, which are red meat, farmed fish, dairy, white meat, and eggs. I encourage you to listen in to that episode if you missed it. In addition to the list I just repeated, I give some helpful caveats for understanding the data and practical swap ideas for eating less of these biggest offenders. And by the way, I wanted to give a quick caveat to last week's episode. I had ended up lumping in pork and poultry into, quote, white meat. Let me clarify that for nutritional reasons, pork should be lumped in with beef and lamb as red meat. That's typically how it's categorized. However, it got lumped in with poultry last week as white meat because it has a similar level of emissions to poultry. So sorry for any confusion that may have caused. Suffice it to say, we'd do well to reduce our intake of all meat for both health and climate reasons. So with those 5 foods in mind, those that we ought to be limiting or even entirely avoiding, what should we eat instead? And not just that, but what are the best 5 choices of what to eat instead? You may be able to guess based on the preview I already provided, but here we go. The 5 best foods to eat for planetary health are, and in no particular order, fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and nuts and seeds. In short, the 5 best foods to eat for planetary health are the 5 main categories of plant foods. Perhaps this is no surprise, given the focus of this podcast and all the details we've already explored over the past year. But isn't it a great thing to know that this advice is supported by the data? By the way, you can view the data for yourself, which comes from Our World in Data, by checking out the links in the show notes. Let's dig in a little more, shall we? Those lowest on the list, meaning those with the smallest footprint, on overall footprint per kilogram of food, are fruits and vegetables. On a per calorie basis, whole foods like nuts, legumes, and whole grains find their way to the lowest spots. Because our food choices matter on both a weight and calorie basis, both ways of looking at the data matter. Plus, all these foods group together in the lower part of the graphs, and on a per calorie basis, they all emit less than 10% of the footprint of beef, with most emitting under 5% of the footprint of beef. So it's not like I'm telling you only to eat rice, apples, almonds, peas, and broccoli. In short, nearly all plant foods emit just a small fraction of what most animal foods emit. This is incredibly freeing when it comes to the choices we're encouraged to make with regard to what we eat on a daily basis. Something I find so beautiful about this list of 5 best foods is that they offer such a wide variety on both the nutritional and pleasure fronts. As far as nutrition is concerned, each macronutrient, that is carbohydrate, fat, and protein, is plentiful across all 5 groups and in their healthiest forms as well. For example, nuts and seeds are rich in mono and polyunsaturated fats, whereas animal products are typically much higher in saturated fats, which we want to avoid. And despite numerous myths spread about protein, there is plenty of protein to be found in plant-based diet rich in legumes, whole grains, and nuts and seeds. Plus, eating a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables gives us a range of vitamins, minerals, and coveted phytonutrients that can have terrific benefits for things like cognition, heart health, and more. And because plants are the only source of dietary fiber, it's also worth pointing out that beneficial contribution to overall health as well. And that's only scratching the surface of nutrition. As far as pleasure is concerned, there is a vast array of tastes, textures, and culinary possibilities here. Whereas the 5 worst offenders, meat, dairy, and eggs, tend to fill fairly similar roles in the meals that contain them, the diverse array of plants available in the 5 best foods for planetary health provide nothing less than the equivalent of a child's playground. There is so much opportunity for delight and room for creative combinations. From Asian stir-fries and noodle bowls, to hearty soups and stews, to Latin-inspired tacos, burritos, and enchiladas, to breakfast hashes or scrambles, to whole grain porridges topped with all manner of fresh or cooked fruit with nuts and seeds, to smoothies, puddings, muffins, and bars, to hummuses, salsas, chutneys, and other dips, to curries and rice, to side salads or hearty meal salads, to breads and pastas, to myriad sweet treats, and I could go on and on. There are so many possibilities for feeding ourselves well while focusing on enjoying the 5 best foods to eat for climate change. And again, those are the 5 main categories of plant foods: fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and nuts and seeds. If you're new to plant-based eating and want additional tools to help you get started, I encourage you to check out my Beginner's Guide to Plant-Based Eating. It's an ebook that I have available on eatingtome.com, and I'll link that below. Whether you're completely new to plant-based eating or have dabbled in it a bit and want more direction, this 30-page guide will enable you to make sustainable progress that will stick over the long term. It is self-paced, built on essential guiding principles, gets practical with exercises and worksheets, and even supports you with additional resources to smooth your way to plant-based success. Check out the link in the show notes to get your copy today. I've also considered cooking in numerous past episodes of this podcast, talking about plant swaps for animal products, creative ways to use plant foods, and tips for making any food delicious. I encourage you to scroll back through past episodes to see what stands out to you. Give those a listen. Also, don't forget to visit eatingtome.com for plant-based recipes to get you started. In addition to basic fundamentals like dairy swaps, I have a variety of breakfast options, mains, snacks, and bakes to inspire your climate-conscious food journey. I'm so glad that you joined me here today. If you found this episode informative or inspiring, please share it around. Help others discover how easy and delicious it can be to eat with the health of our planet in mind. All it takes is a bit of awareness and intentionality. If you have questions or want to suggest a topic for a future episode, I'd love to hear from you. Send an email to edenandme@substack.com. If you want recipes, again, head on over to edenandme.com, where you can find a variety of delicious recipes to bring what you're learning into the kitchen. Finally, become an email subscriber on Substack to have new podcast episodes delivered right to your inbox. If you appreciate the work I'm doing and want to support the show, you'll also have the option of becoming a paid subscriber. That's all for now, friends. Until next time, be well. Thanks for listening to Eating for Eden. If you found this episode informative or inspiring, please consider sharing it with a friend. Climate change is an issue we all need to tackle together, so let's invite others to journey along with us as we continue the conversation and start taking action. Until next time, take care.